Alright, in this video we'll see how to create a poll system. O- A poll system is nothing but a voting system that you'll see on all the posts with the two buttons upvote and downvote. So consider this is a post, again this is a post. So these are the two posts. Now if I make the answer saying that I have not seen it, so the downvote decreases the score. The same way this is getting affected without the page load. Now if I make this upvote, you'll see the score gets increased without the page refresh. The same way the score is again can be visible in all other posts. So you can see the 5 which we have made it by pressing the upvote. Now in any case, if you want to change the poll question, like have you watched Jurassic Park previously, now I'm making this watch Superman. If I click on activate, now this poll is nothing but a question, so this question will be visible on all the post pages. Now you see, have you watched Superman, I say upvote yes sometimes, and if I click on the other post and check whether it got reflected, yes it got reflected. Now let me just upload some more time from this post, which is post 2, and if I get back to the other post and view the score, it's getting reflected as we have made it on the other post. Now as said, this can be, if you want to add one more post, let me say have you watched Flash movie, and if you click on add poll, now this poll is added, and if you wish to make it activate, once you click on activate, the other questions will get deactivated by default. And let me check whether the Flash movie got updated on all posts, and yes you can see watch Flash, and on the other post also you can see it's available. So we'll see, let's look at the flow that we are going to see. We are going to see how to create a custom table. So these, whenever you fill those form values, these values get stored into a custom table. You can see this is a table that we are going to see how to create it. Now we'll see how to create a custom menu. So here on the sidebar you'll see simple poll. When I click on it, you'll see a form, and along with the form, whatever the data that you have entered, that just shows up in at the end of the form. Now we will see how to modify the post content. So you can see these post content has got modified, and once it got modified, you'll see the form. So again, this is a form that gets added to each post. We'll see how to do that, and finally we'll, on each button click, you'll see the data is getting updated and it's getting displayed even without the page refresh. So that's possible with the help of AJAX. Now you'll see on each click the database table will get updated, and once it get updated, that data gets displayed over here, not just over here, but on all the posts which is in the in this particular website. Now without wasting time, let's get started. So the flow is very simple. First we have to create a question. So once you click on question, you need to decide which question to get displayed on all the posts. Let me just say I want this recently added to get displayed on all the posts. So click on activate. Once you click on activate, you will see the other which was activated gets deactivated by itself, and along with that you will see the total upvotes and downvotes the question has got on this particular page. Now since I made the mask question, you'll see on all the blog posts which is available on the website has the question called watched mask, and if someone says no, it would get downvoted, and again the database will get one downvote where the mask is there. And the same way, if I upvote some more time, the upvote is now, let's say 4, and if I check the database, you'll see the upvote is now 5. Actually I made this +1, that's the reason it's showing up. Not an issue, we'll correct it. Fine, without wasting time, let's get started. So for the plugin to work, we need to show our plugin in this particular page. I'll deactivate the old one, and what we are going to do is we are simply going to show up our plugin in this particular page. So to do that, what we need to do is we need to create a folder in the plugin folder. This is my current website, it's called PHP, so which is called plugin website, and here this inside the WP content I have a plugin folder where all my plugin would be there. Now I'll just add a folder which is called system. This is the name of the plugin. I have named it. Now we need to store a PHP file inside our folder which we have created. Let me just name it as, it is recommended to have the same folder name, so I'm just doing it as it is, for system.php. Now we need some metadata to display on this particular page. So the metadata is nothing but we need to give the name of the plugin, we need to give the description, we need to give the version, we need to give the author. So for this meta, we need to give the comment for that. So I'm just naming it as UI Monk Poll System, and you see your plugin has shown up with the description which you have mentioned here, with your version number, with your author name. Now what we need to do is, when I click on activate, I want a table to get created. So that table will have these columns. So for that, when we would be calling a plugin called register activation hook. So whenever the register activation hook is called, that means when your plugin is activated, the relevant function would get called. So the relevant function is this one. This need to be called once we click on the active plugin. So for that, the default feature that we want is, we need to create a table, and we would be passing the table name with the prefix. You can see on all the table name we have WP underscore is there. So for that, to get our current database prefix, WordPress gives you a feature called WPDB global object. We need to get the WPDB global object and then fetch the prefixes, and we can assign the table name, and we can assign the character set. So let's do that. So this is a global WPDB global WordPress object, which will give access to your database. Now I'm defining the column name, sorry, table name, and assigning the prefix, which is WP hyphen simple hyphen poll hyphen 2. Now let's call the create query. Now along with that, we need to give the character set. It's going to be either UTF-8 or ASCII. Now we don't have to worry about it. It's for the internal database data sorting. Now for the SQL, I have created create table with the table name which I have passed, which is this one. This is going to be the primary key, as I have mentioned it at the bottom, and this is the column name ID, this is the column name question, this is the column name upvotes, this is the column name downloads, and this is the column active. The only thing that we have to focus on is the active. The active will accept only one value. It's going to be either 1 or it's going to be either 2. 1 means active, 0 means, sorry, 1 and 0, not 2, 1 and 0. 1 means active, 0 means deactive or not active, you can say. So to run this query, WordPress gives you a function called delta db. It's particularly for the custom table. If it's inbuilt table, we would be using WP query. It's custom table, so we'll be using delta db. So to use delta db, we need to define the file where the delta db is already there. So with the help of php require once, we'll call that function. So we'll call that file, define it, and then we'll call the WPDB and pass the SQL to it. Now once it's done, once your plugin is active, you should see your let me just activate it. You should see your current table that would be created on this particular database. Yes, you can see when I click on it, you'll see the column which you have added, it's available. Now what we need to do is, we need to create a menu so that we can click on it and insert the form. So for that, we need to call a hook, which is admin menu. So the admin menu is responsible for displaying all your admin menu hook is responsible for displaying all your menu item. Now over this, I have defined a function. So this is going to be the page name, this is going to be the page title, and this is going to be the admin's capability, which is manage option, and this is going to be the slug, and this is going to be the function that get triggered when you click on the menu. So this is enough just to show your menu on the sidebar. So you can see simple poll is available. Once I click on it, as of now it's going to be blank, but we need a form. Let's display the form. Since we are inside PHP, we are just using the HTML. We have closed the PHP and written our HTML, and then we have opened the PHP. Now you'll see a form. with just values. The one is the input field, the second one is simply the button. So now when I click on add poll, I want the data to get stored into the database. So for that, what we need to do is we need to call the table again and the WPDB object and need to run the insert query. And for that, we need to check whether the value is there or not. So for that, we would be using, if the question is there, input field with value name is there, then only insert the value. So we are simply passing the question, and then we are making upvote, downvote and active as 0. So once everything is done, we would be sending the success message saying that updated. Let's try adding a poll, and you should see the poll added. So once you click on browse, you'll see the column shows up. Now let's add one more poll, which is watch Superman, and if I click on the table, you'll see the another poll. Now I want to fetch those value and display it over here. So to fetch those value, we need to run a query that will fetch all the values from this table and display it over here. So it's very simple. We'll be using the get result function from the object WPDB, let's call that. And now since we have stored this and stored the value into the poll, with the help of for each loop, we can display all the database value into the table. Now it's simply a CRUD operation where this table head is defined, and as we have made the polls which has all the questions, you can see question is there, and let me just remove it for now. Question is there, the upvote is there, the download is there, and as said, the active is going to be either 0 and 1, and so we are using a condition. If it is 0, if it is 1, then say yes. If it is 0, then say no. So right now it's no. So let's, what if I want to change the value of no to yes? So in that case, we want to have a button. Once I click on the button, we need to get this row ID, and we need to modify the value from 0 to 1. I'm saying 0 and 1 because in the active column you'll see only 0 and 1 value, not the yes or no. For the yes or no is for our convenient. Now I want to add a button, and in this button, when I click on the button, I want to get this rows ID so that I can run a query and change the active column from 0 to 1. So let's do that. So it's very simple. Again, when I click on it, I want the button, I want the ID to get appended on the URL. So for that, I'll use a form. So I'll use a form and I'll write a input type hidden, and that input type hidden will have a value of the row ID, and this row ID will send to the URL, and the button itself says if it is 1, then if it is 0, then say deactivate. Sorry, if it is 1, then say deactivate. If it is 0, then say activate. So it's little confusion, but to make the code more efficient by complicate into a very simple lines, it is required. Either it's going to be 0 or 1. If it is active, then we have to make this deactive. If it is not active, then we have to make it active. That's what I have written here. Now if I make a refresh, you will see a button. So I have surrounded it with the form so that when I click on the activate, you should see the ID that should get appended on the URL. So I am making it post again so that we don't see it. So now we need to access this toggle ID in the code and run the update query. Let's do that. Now it's very simple. We have got the ID from the URL. I have made it post. So if I refresh, I have made it post. Now from the URL, it's going to be string, so we are going to convert it to the int value so that we can pass it to the database. So now we'll be running a query that will fetch this particular data's value, that will fetch this particular value, and what we want to do is, if it is deactive, we have to make it active. So let's run that query. So what I'm basically doing is, if I click on activate, we have to run a code that should deactivate all the other one and then activate which is already there. To make this point clear, consider we have 10 rows and one of the poll is active. So when I click on the other button, what I want is, first I want to make all the rows deactive, and then I want to get the button which I have clicked, and only the particular row should get active. So for that, I have made, when I click on the button, I have made all the column name with active is 0, and when I update it, the where I have clicked, so where I have clicked, I will be getting the ID. So I have got the ID, and just only that make active. Make the rest of them deactive, and get the ID which where the button is clicked. Only that make active. So let me just show you. So if I click on this active, this one is active now. The same way, if I add one more value and try to show you, if I click on this Jurassic Park, first it will make all deactive, and then it will check the row which is active, and then it will make it active. So what if I click on deactive, what should happen? Nothing is happening. I want to make this toggle. So for that, we'll first do what we'll first do is we'll first make sure which one is already active. We'll make it deactive. Now with this code, we'll get the active one, and then we'll make it deactive. So now if you see, if something is active, it only gets deactive. Now next time when I click again, the one which is active, the one which was deactive, now it's active. So it's little confusion, but you can do it. Just go forward and backward whatever I said, and you'll get a clear understanding. Now what we need, now we need to write a code that need to append a HTML like this on every post. Now it won't be available because I have deactivated the plugin. So let's just append this div on all the post. So for that, we have a special function called, we have a special hook called the content. So it's not a hook, we are modifying the default behavior, so we'll be using the add filter option. Now in this particular function, what we do is we would modify the content of the post, and we'll append our own HTML. Let's do that. And for that also, we need to fetch the value which is currently active. So either one question is active, so get that active and display the question accordingly. Let's do that. Now here in this function, what we are doing is, let's first define the table name. We are first fetching which one is active with this query. The one which is active will have the ID, also will have the question, and it will have the upvote and downvote count. And the only thing that we need to focus on is this div which has ID, first one. The second thing that we have to notice is the upvote and the downvote, which is surrounded with the span with class with ID sp_score. Now if you refresh the post, the one which is active, the question will show up. Watch, Jurassic Park is active now, so it's showing up. Now let's say watch flash, and if I make a refresh, you should see watch flash. Now if I click on upvote and downvote, without the page getting refreshed, the data need to be updated. So for that, we would be running a JavaScript, and that JavaScript should get appended on all the pages. So now what we need to do is we need to run a JS. So to run the JS, again you need to write the PHP. We need to close the PHP so that we can write our HTML. So what we need to do is, basically whenever there is an AJAX, you need to send a request to the URL. So with the help of the URL, you would be passing some parameter to it, so that we can access those parameter and modify the table. I am repeating again, whenever we use AJAX, we will be using the URL to send data to a particular page. That's what we have been doing in PHP. We use URL, and we use URL to send those data, send some valuable data, so send that key value pair and access that key value pair from the URL into the another file. So here we won't be using the to create the URL, we would be using the form data function of JavaScript. Now we are seeing when the DOM is loaded, then display. We need to add a event listener on both the buttons like the upvote and downvote. Let's do that. Now since both the function, which is click function, is going to trigger the AJAX, I am going to pass those value. If I click on upvote, the up would be passed as a parameter to the vote function. If I click downvote, down would be passed to the argument. Down would be passed as an argument for the vote class, since these both are going to trigger the AJAX. That's why the same function. And whenever I click upvote and downvote, the data need to get modified on the table. So how are we going to identify which table, which row need to get modified? So for that we need to get the ID. So for that we have already passed data ID. So let's access this data ID in the JavaScript. We need to first define this parent div so that we can access this attribute. So let's define the parent div first. So this is the parent div with poll, and then with this we'll access the data hyphen ID. Now we know which row to modify with this data ID, which we have already passed over here. Now we need to send the up value, the upvote and downvote values, the ID value along with the action. Now I'm going to repeat one more time. We will be using the URL to send the ID, the upvote and downvote value along with another value which is called action. So action is required for the WordPress AJAX function. So how are we going to do that? First let me send these value to the URL with the help of form data. Now I have created a form data, and with this form data I have appended the action, I have appended the ID, and I have appended either it's going to be upvote or downvote. So whether it's going to be upvote or downvote. Now I have said ID is important. So before that, let me just send these value to the AJAX with the help of fetch API. So these value would be sent to a URL called admin-ajax. Admin-ajax with the form data with the method post, and we are passing the data, and we need to convert it into text. And once it got converted into text, then we need to select the div with select the span tag with ID, this one, and modify this text. So you can see this data new score is actually this one. Now the URL, which is this one, has the information like these: action, poll ID, and vote. We understand that we need ID to modify the row. We understand that we need this vote, upvote or downvote to modify the upvote column or downvote column. The action is required to know that in PHP we will be creating a separate function that handles the form logic, but in WordPress here we have a hook called admin underscore wp underscore ajax. So this wp underscore ajax is actually the hook, and then whatever you write is actually the action name that we have passed. So as I said, the action name is required to identify which URL, which function will handle this logic. So the function with name wp-ajax hyphen this action value, which is this one, will handle the logic for this particular request. So now we need to define that. So what should happen? We need to write a logic that will simply, there seems to be an error. We need to write a logic that will simply make upvote and downvote that would get reflected on the table. So let's do that. As we have already done, we have to fetch the value from the URL. So since it's going to be the string, we have converted into the integer value so that we can update it on the database. So if it is upvote, if it is up, then make it upvote. If it is downvote, then make it downvote. Now we need to fetch the current row which we are modifying the upvote and downvote with the help of this ID. Now we got the current row with the help of the ID that we have passed. You can see the ID that we have passed will get replaced with this %d. It is nothing but digit, %digit. If it is string, it will be yes. So that's why we have typecasted it. Now this oat will have the column name, either it's going to be upvote or either it's going to be downvote, and this is going to be the value, either it's going to be 0 or 1. If it is 0, then it will make it 1. If it is 1, based on that, here your active and not active 0 and 1 will get updated. So once you update based on this click, then we need to display those values upvote and downvote on this particular new score value. Now we need to individually get what is the upvote count of this particular row, what is the downvote count of this particular row, and then we need to append it and return the value. Once we return, we need to close the wp_die by simply saying that close the AJAX operation right now with the help of wp_die, and that's it. Your AJAX would get work. So if I click on upvote, there seems to be an error. Let's see. I think I have not defined the table name and column name for over here. Let's do that. Now if I make a refresh and click on, it says score span is not defined. Let me check what it is. It's not able to find where to append this, so we need to call the span also, span with ID, so that it knows where to append this. So now on each click, you'll see the data is getting added. On each downvote, the data is getting decremented. So based on that, you'll see the data of upvote and downvote on this particular table. Let's just activate this Jurassic Park and let's try adding some upvote to this Jurassic Park so that we can see the values are displaying properly. Yes, it's getting displayed properly, and same way you can see it on the other post as well. Jurassic Park has 2 score. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening. And other than that, let's just explore one more thing. If I give an incognito mode and if I go down, if I make an output, it's because there is one more function that I need to there is one more hook that I need to show you. This one is for the admin and this one is for the not logged in user. For not logged in user, WordPress has another function which is no private, wp-ajax-no private. So this is the action attribute. That's it. Now you see, if I make a downvote and if I make an output, even if I am not logged in, that works fine. So that's possible only because of this new hook that we have learned today. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening.